course, the Chinese would feel the same way as the Americans did in the 1960s, but that's not the end of the discussion, because we know from all types of publicly available information, the United States has a submarine fleet in the Western Pacific. And every one of those submarines are carrying, 24, 48 or more nuclear missiles. So the end result is, if we're just looking at longitudes, we have got a nuclear force in the Western Pacific, and it's there 24/7. So the Chinese ought to be a little more worried about the submarines and then our missile fleet in Guam, for example, or in Okinawa, or in South Korea, because China doesn't get away from that. Let's just call it pressure, that military pressure, regardless of what happens to Taiwan. Now, in the event of a war, Taiwan would really be useful in terms of air bases. We did have air bases in Taiwan before, and as you probably know from looking at my other videos in the campaign, we will formally recognize Taiwan. In fact, we will go to the southwestern part of Taiwan, where my wife comes from. My wife's family owns a little beachside hotel. It's kind of smallish, sort of like a 12-room, 15-room small bed and breakfast type of hotel. It's facing China, but it's an absolute beautiful place. Been there many times, and we're going to hold that ceremony right there, and we are going to write all of the indecision and false turns that we've taken with Taiwan since 1948. And we're going to formally recognize Taiwan, and we're going to propose that we lease one or two of their air bases, because they have air bases on the eastern side of the island, basically on the American side of the island, and we will man those, and we will station military aircraft there, and we will continue to act like brothers for all the reasons that we talked about before. Now, in terms of the rest of the question, in terms of Taiwan's nuclear capability, there are actually several countries that have this capability. I mean, Japan is one, South Korea is one, Taiwan is one. All the Western European nations have the same technological ability. I mean, once the economy develops to a certain point where you've got a brain trust of engineers, of physicists, of people who are educated in the world of nuclear energy. The difference between nuclear energy and a nuclear bomb is a baby step. The issue about taking that baby step is more an issue of do they want to maintain the nuclear force? Do they want to suffer any political fallback? Do they really want to take a chance of increasing a nuclear exchange, for example? So those are more sort of political questions than technological questions. Now, most countries choose not to develop nuclear weapons simply because they look around their neighborhoods and it's like no point. They don't need them. They're not getting any more security out of their military by having nuclear weapons. So specifically in the case of Taiwan, well, we know that if we could pull up a military map, and there are some that are publicly available, that actually shows where America has lots of its Western Pacific military force. Of course, it's constantly moving, but these maps that you'll find on Google and various China and American Western Pacific types of documentaries, they very clearly shows the islands. It shows where we have military assets. And so on the nuclear side, there's really no point in Taiwan developing nuclear weapons because, number one, they can use what's called a porcupine defense to protect its island. And that basically means what's happening in the Ukraine right now, we just kind of ramp that up, 1,000 times. It's very hard to get onto Taiwan if you're trying to land the force because it's a mountainous country. So there are only a few places where the Chinese military could actually land, but those are well defended. So it's the whole exercise from the Chinese point of view is an exercise of futility, which is why in the case of Lake Pelosi, if we take the current events, The Chinese are always threatening some kind of invasion or military retaliation if America sends an important person to Taiwan. I mean, once you've looked at this issue and you understand it in the detail that we're talking about, it's all comical. You know, I mean, the image that one should have in their mind is one of a monkey in a cage who is upset and twirling around and holding onto the bars and creating a ruckus. But the reality is they're not getting out of the cage. That monkey can't do anything, and it's just all show. And it is a good thing that Nancy Pelosi knows the details of Taiwan, like we're talking about here. And then, you know, having said all of that, it becomes very easy to understand that Taiwan is America's steadfast friend in the Western Pacific, and therefore, in the Quigley administration, we are going to formalize and make that friendship. We're going to put it on the level that it should have been left at going all the way back to 1948.